I just wanna show you what it feels like. Sometimes I wanna end it all and kill the lights. Crying out for help, but I can still fight. Attacked by my conscience on a chill night. Just picture me rolling.
Okay, how we doing, everybody? Welcome to VetTableTalk, where we actually let a veteran tell their side of the story. We're gonna do a guided discussion, and today is gonna be a little bit different, but I wanna introduce you to my guests. Can you please introduce yourself?
Thomas Sells, Staff Sergeant, 25th Division, 27th Infantry, Frontline Vietnam, 1966.
Strong. So that means y'all in for a treat today. Cause I am. I don't know about you, but I'm excited. You know what I mean? So cool. So we know, okay, you were infantry. How long did you serve? What year to what year?
I went in August 4th, 1964, and I was discharged July 16th, 1968.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. How was the family strain on joining the military? Did it help or hinder?
Well, to begin with, my family didn't know I had joined the service for about the first 6 months. And further, when I joined the service, I was not actually aware that the country was at war. So I joined the military for a place to go, not to join the fight. But I quickly discovered that joining the fight I would, and joining the fight I did. Once the family knew I was alive, they were relieved. But I had not been assigned to combat yet. And I think once I was assigned to combat, everyone became a little emotional, especially me. And then during combat, when the actual reality of taking human life was in front of me, my father was a Methodist minister, and from Vietnam I wrote him privately, not really wanting to get the entire family involved in my dilemma, and certainly not my mom, but from a religious aspect, which I was not particularly an ardent follower. But I wanted to get my father's take on what I was being asked to do and how he saw it. I was really looking for, I suppose, in retrospect, validation and some kind of agreement. So I involved my father in a way that I did not involve anyone else in the family. And he did write me back, and his letter was meaningful and directive. But I do also have to say that I did not necessarily follow all of his direction 100%. I became involved in sort of captured by the excitement and the adrenaline of combat, and not from a calm perspective point of view. So the family was quite pleased when I came home.
That's always a blessing. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate it. Cool. Since, what are some of the new things that you're personally seeing coming out of the VA that wasn't available when you first came out?
Well, our Department of Veterans Affairs today is almost completely revamped. and still with a great deal of resistance, but the Department of Veterans Affairs is attempting in its own way to be relevant to today's society and to today's veterans. For example, when I came home from Vietnam, December 15, 1966, I was not directed, or was it made available to me to have any kind of a debriefing. I immediately went on leave before going to my next duty post, and I was a fright to my family because I was wild and uninhibited, and I was accustomed to the free-for-all of daily combat missions and all of the attendant things that go along with that, unstructured, undisciplined, self-serving, and no mental consultation or no sessions with psychiatrists or psychologists. In retrospect, now I understand how virtually impossible it is for a person to come from combat into regular society, civilization, without some kind of counseling. And I do not believe the term PTSD, post-traumatic stress syndrome, was even coined at the time. So I remember, being up day and night, most often, and that still exists 54 years later, sometimes afraid to go to sleep. Beyonce sings a song in the movie Fighting Temptation. And the words go something like this. So I used to wake up and wish that I'd stayed asleep. Because when I went to sleep, I was on top of the world. But when I woke up, the world was on top of me. And that was a very frequent occurrence. The nightmares, the visions, recollections of behavior which were not exemplary, haunted me, immediately frightened my relatives. And then I was later sent to Germany for my final year and a half or so, maybe a little more than that. And in garrison, combat soldiers immediately following combat don't fare well in garrison.
Never do, still to this day.
And so there were lots of problems there as well. The adjustment, and I'm not sure that the adjustment has fully taken place, but certainly in the last 10 years, with my involvement with the Department of Veterans Affairs and my medical availabilities now at the VA Medical Center, and most specifically the West Los Angeles Medical Center, have helped me tremendously, and also my involvement in a 12-step program where I have achieved sobriety and some relatively calm perspective on the world around me. The anger has begun to dissipate. The violence had begun to dissipate. The desire to participate in violence has begun to dissipate. There was a time it was very difficult for me to even hear gunshots in civilian life because I had an inclination to participate. It's what I knew. So in the Department of Veterans Affairs now, some of the newer concepts of which I've had the privilege of helping to usher in as well, serving on a subcommittee of the Department of Veterans Affairs that is bringing in concepts like Tai Chi, acupuncture, chiropractic services, as well as mental health services. I know for almost 2 years I had exclusive one-on-ones on a weekly basis with the head of psychology at the West Los Angeles VA Medical Center. I was really a little too far gone to be put in a group setting. After a couple of years, it was suggested that I join some kind of a group setting, but my unbridled restrictions, concepts on life and combat and violence and the nightmares and the sleepless nights and the restless nights and the effects that was having on my mind and body were just really would have been unsettling in a group setting. I would have hated to bring everyone else in the group along with me where I was at that time. But between the new concepts of whole health in the Department of Veterans Affairs and its medical centers and clinics, as well as my involvement 32 and a half years now in the 12-step program, have actually altered my life and have given me the possibility of living out the rest of my life in peace, calm, serenity, and being a productive contributor to society.
Thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. Because, like, basically on the point of how you mentioned your one-on-one services, I had a lot of one-on-ones. For the last year and a half, I've been doing one-on-one and individual groups every week as well. And I know that helped me like a tremendous bit because for some reason when I first got out of the military, I just couldn't stop going to the psych ward. Like that was, I just wanted somebody to tell me I wasn't crazy. Literally, like after a long time, it was just, cause like I couldn't adapt. I just couldn't adjust. And at that time too, like I'm actually a part of a 12-step program myself. And with the help of that and a lot of like, yeah, it's not just medications, but like actual where I'm learning mindfulness, learning to practice it. And I'm talking about this is a weekly thing. It's not only drilled into me with my 12-step work, but like actually I go to therapy and I'm sitting with a group of veterans who've done some hard stuff and they go, we need to practice mindfulness. And to see other men that have been through some of the things that I've been through that can tear down that wall and get to that place where we're all just sitting there practicing mindfulness together and just finding things we're grateful for today and mindful for. It was something that I really did appreciate from the VA. So like, I really do want to thank everybody that you're involved with and the people that are on those committees and really pushing for us to get those things, because if it wasn't for them, I don't know where I'd be. Honestly, I most likely would have committed suicide a long time ago.
Well, mindfulness for me is a very nebulous concept. So I had to really be exposed to more tangible things first. And one of those first concepts was Tai Chi. Now, I was involved with the West LA Medical Center when it was one of 3 test sites across the US to introduce Tai Chi conceptually and to monitor what its effects would be on the veteran. And it's also important to note Tai Chi is a martial arts. However, its origin comes from the ancient Chinese attempt to explain the universe around them, which is really a spiritual concept. The martial arts came later, and from the martial arts, which was developed from their observation of the universe and its circular motion, which is why Tai Chi as a martial arts never has a blow that is thrown in a straight line. All blows are circular and they are energy developed. And then what happened with the martial arts is in slow form, as probably many of you have seen, practitioners in the parks and oceanside and seasides and backyards and front yards around the world. In form, it has a positive effect on the respiratory system, circulatory system, the organs, your peace and serenity. And Tai Chi is also a philosophy of living. It does not, as most martial arts that were derivatives of Tai Chi, it does not seek to subdue or to win a confrontation. Tai Chi teaches you to deflect and avoid in real form. And in slow form, it is a healing agent. So that was something more tangible that I could understand and practice. Although constantly the concept of mindfulness continued to be introduced, which is almost like meditation. Meditation is a very difficult process for me because it requires some mental control. Tai Chi allows you to physically move yourself into mental control, where it becomes a result of the process as opposed to the immediate movement into mindfulness. So my mindfulness was generated by the practice of Tai Chi. And when I started Tai Chi physically, I was still suffering tremendously from PTSD, nightmares. I still have problems with cars backfiring. I have problems with firecrackers and these rockets that go off with the whistle that mimics the sound of an incoming mortar round. 54 years from combat, I'm still ducking for cover at these particular sounds. Tai Chi had a positive effect on that. And then I began to get introduced to other things. Acupuncture. And acupuncture began to, as I practiced it every week and still do, it opens up all the closed paths in my body to allow everything to flow freely, gently, normally, naturally. And then I was introduced to chiropractic services because I brought a lot of pain in my body out of the service. June 22nd, 1966, I was involved in a grenade booby trap explosion, which basically affected the lower parts of my body and my knees. And it was not an American grenade. Had it been an American grenade, I would, if alive, I would certainly not have my lower limbs. It was a Chinese grenade which doesn't have the blast power or the number of fragments. So it has several larger fragments and many minute fragments. And I took a lot of those minute fragments into my lower legs and knees. They were not surgically extracted, I was told, and it proved to be true. Over time, they fester out just like a splinter. I remember once, several years after the service, I was at a party I had lime green slacks on. And I was dancing as best I could. And a piece came out of my knee. I was not aware that it was coming out, but it started to bleed. And I had these pants on, and then people saw the bottom of my trousers covered with blood, and people at the party got excited. They thought maybe somebody had stabbed me or shot me or whatever, which, went along with my lifestyle at that time. But it was just another piece festering out. But the bottom line is, it has caused tremendous arthritis and pain. I live in pain 24/7. I do not experience a moment in life without pain. But the VA has developed a process for me to be able to manage pain, not eliminate pain. And I have been able to reject all of the surgical recommendations, which are many. I've been recommended to have shoulder replacement, both shoulders, which I have refused. It has been suggested that I have cervical removal, which is your neck, and replaced with a titanium rod, which limits your movement, mobility, range of motion, and I have rejected that. It has been suggested to fuse both of my big toes, which are full of arthritis, which then you have no ability to do certain kinds of sports and even Tai Chi. And I have rejected all of those things. Doctors have suggested that I take OxyContin. When I refused to take OxyContin, it was suggested to me to take the prescription home with me just in case, which I also refused to do. So the management of pain, which now is readily available throughout the VA, through acupuncture, chiropractic services, Tai Chi, yoga, which is a really big thing, the stretching that yoga is involved. And currently, I have one-on-one private yoga classes, every week, 1 hour every week. I mean, the things that are available to the VA. Now, perhaps I know more about their availability because of my serving on these committees, this particular committee that is actually involved in getting those things introduced, and having been one of the originals in the tests and
trials.
yes, in 2008, 2009, where all of these things have emanated from and have grown from. But the committee itself, which also is responsible for the education, not just the cultural transformation, but for the education of the vets, that these things are available, it is starting to get through. Fortunately, it is starting to get through. There are still too many of us wandering the streets, homeless, in pain, full of PTSD, full of fear, full of fright, still engaged in violence. Still too many. But the services are beginning to proliferate. Hopefully, some of the very aggressive and progressive plans to eliminate veteran homelessness will continue to grow and grow. I'm very pleased with what I see that's happening in Los Angeles with regard to coming out of the mayor's office, and also some of the plans coming from the Department of Veterans Affairs have not yet manifested themselves into reality, but at least it's part of the discussion. And once homelessness is under control, then that vet has the opportunity to then seek other services which will address their post-traumatic stress syndrome, which will address their hunger, which will address their pain, and make them more viable members of this great society in which we live.
Thank you so much. I really do appreciate that. And what is one dream that came true while serving or after serving that was like as a result of the military?
Well, I'm not really able to focus on a dream that came true while serving. Because that's really where all the nightmares began. I did do one thing that I was proud of, not necessarily that it was a dream, but near my last 3 months in Vietnam, I had an older brother who was married and whose wife was pregnant, who was awaiting orders. He was an officer. He was awaiting orders, and since the military had a policy where two brothers would not be in combat at the same time unless they agreed, and my older brother was significantly more stable than I was, and so I agreed in communication with my parents that I would remain in Vietnam until my brother received orders to wherever, because he would not receive orders in Vietnam as long as I was there. And frankly, I was pretty accustomed to the violence that was taking place in my life at the time. So that wasn't a dream come true, but it was, I guess, probably the best thing that I did while there, because I did many things that were not good. Now, following, I have had the opportunity to make a difference in the lives of other vets. And I am guilty of always asking any vet whether they're combat, because my tendency is towards the problem of combat vets. But I understand we all have problems and we all have needs and we all need to be cared for. But specifically, I am interested in the welfare of combat vets. And so I have, in my capacity with the West Los Angeles VA and with the Department of Veterans Affairs through this congressional level subcommittee, I've been able to make a difference in how they are perceived and what their medical remedies are. And I've been given many opportunities to carry that message. I've done at least a half a dozen videos for the VA. At the West LA VA in the pain clinic, you cannot even get served there without watching a video in which I'm in. So it's very difficult for me to walk on campus without being recognized, especially by anyone who is being treated for pain, because they have to watch the video and understand the benefits of specifically acupuncture, Tai Chi, and chiropractic services, which are the focus of the video. 3 years ago, the National Magazine Consumer Reports asked the Department of Veterans Affairs to do interviews, magazine article for them. And so in the May issue of some year, 16, 17, something like that, I don't remember exactly, they did a 12-page spread featuring their interview with me regarding all of these pain management techniques. And then as a result of the success of that magazine interview, they then requested to do a video which featured most of the things I talked about in the magazine article, and that has been made available to veterans who are receiving service, veterans who are not receiving service. You know, it's ironic, we've got approximately 6 million veterans and only maybe 20-30% receive any kind of care from the VA. Some of those who are not receiving medical care from the VA may be productively working and may be covered by insurance, particularly since the passage of the Affordable Health Care Act. But civilian doctors don't really understand the nuances, particularly those of combat vets. It's a frightening thing to a civilian doctor to understand that a combat vet wants to still kill. And there are rules and regulations as to what we can say. Even in my own individual private sessions with the head of psychology at the West LA Medical Center, I have been cautioned a couple of times by Dr. Diefenbach there to not continue with my train of conversation because it may lead to her necessity of having to turn me in. Well, especially when I first came out of the service after combat was so recent. And Lieutenant John Calley in 1970 was put on trial for having done things that I had seen done by many. Many of your Vietnam vets went silent. We were not really offered adequate medical care in the first place. And now, though that medical care was inadequate, now we accepted none of it. So even if a psychologist or psychiatrist or counselor or therapist was made available to me, I was not about to answer anything. And then even after I came in from the cold in 2009, after having stabilized myself in the 12-step program, in the VA, wanting to speak freely, just to relieve myself, I was all too frequently cautioned not to continue. So I guess there's still stories untold, feelings that are still seeking release and outlet. And unreleased anger. Not to make your podcast controversial, however, given this opportunity, I still have not heard an adequate explanation on why the M16 replaced the M1, because the M16 was an unworkable, malfunctioning weapon in the middle of combat. I have fired my weapon 20 feet from the enemy and it misfired. The only reason I'm still alive is that my boys came through the bamboo hedgerow and lit this guy up before he could shoot me. So, I still have unanswered questions about those weapons, about the whole process of combat, of war. But I'm sure many vets have questions that have not been answered. And I'm not altogether certain that all my questions need to be answered. I tell you, the most overriding factor for me today is to just live a healthy life with the years that are still available to me, to be in healthy relationships with friends and my intimate relationship as well, and to learn to live with unanswered questions, because I'm not sure I want to know the answer. I just know that occasionally I get a little angry about it. But, you know, out of self-preservation, I keep no weapons because I will use them. Out of anger, I discarded everything, every memory, clothing, the old combat boots from Vietnam, which are in style today. I wish I had a pair. People would say, "Oh, those are cool," because they were.
Yeah.
Even though they had the vents, which allowed the rice paddy water, which was full of animal dung, to seep in and cause jungle rot and leeches, all of which scars and such I still bear. I still have leech marks up and down my legs that'll never go away. Anyway, that's another story. But no, I appreciate this medium. And I'm hoping that as you go forward, because I know you're in your embryonic stages, that other veterans will take advantage of it and speak truthfully, and allow themselves and the nation to continue to heal. Because I'm still healing from coming home from Vietnam, where the most frequent question that I was asked when I came home from Vietnam was, did you kill anybody? What a question to ask. I was a teenager. I turned 21 on the battlefield. What a question to ask, and how in the hell do you answer it? The only saving grace was that it was very frequently followed by, can I buy you a drink?
Very true.
To which I always said yes. So, I'm in a reasonably good place today. Back to your original question about what dreams are coming true today and what am I doing today possibly that is as satisfying as a dream come true, is that the opportunity to make a difference. I have a platform from which I can be heard, particularly by veterans, but by civilians as well, particularly with regard to pain management. I've done enough devastating things in my life. I would like these years to be full of positive achievements for the good of society. I'm not looking for anything. I've learned to live a meager, humble life. I've learned that that is better for me. It is a saving grace. I do not want to be in a spiral in which I have to achieve something over another, like in a workplace where everybody is trying to be the chief executive. I don't want to compete in life that way. So that's what's coming out of these years with the VA in its quest for disseminating whole health, and in the 32 and a half years that I have lived sober in a 12-step program and the principles by which it abides, to be useful to my fellows.
Thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. And I got one last thing for you. We're going to take it home with this. We're going to have some warriors that are currently serving right now that are going to watch this. And I want to know, what is one thing you just want to tell them before we close out? Because this is the closing. This is the end. I want you to just finish them strong, bring them home before they come home.
I've met many of the younger veterans and those who are still in service, active duty. In fact, I have a nephew who is very soon going, actually he's a great nephew. Mm-hmm. his mom is my niece. So he's a great nephew, acknowledging the years in which I have lived. And he's on his way to the Middle East for a third tour. In this volunteer army, people have to do multiple tours. We are not replaced by draftees from society. And I want to thank those who are on active duty today, particularly those who are in combat zones, for being willing to serve. And I pray that they have the mental and physical attention necessary for them to stay whole, be whole, and to be productive members of society when they choose to get out. But I am particularly grateful for their willingness to serve. And then also I say to those who are still on active duty to take advantage of the whole health concepts that are being introduced today and not reject them on face, because many of the whole health concepts have Eastern therapeutic origins, which many in the West will reject and have rejected on their face, but just to allow themselves to be exposed to Tai Chi and to yoga and to acupuncture and to other chiropractic services and to mental health counseling, and to not make drugs, narcotics, the first choice, if ever a choice. That's what I would like to say. That's what I am saying to them. And that's my wish, that's my prayer for them.
And thank you so much for that. So we have one customary part of this where we gotta hug it out after this, because we just went there. Thank you so much for being a part of this, and I appreciate you for sharing your experience with us.
All right.
Thank you so much. All right, everybody. So this has been another episode of Vet Table Talk. And then we just gonna end it like this. It was a really amazing experience. So like I all said, we're gonna link some things down below for you guys to check out, so some of you warriors know some of the resources out there available for you. And I'd like to thank my guests again. I really do appreciate everything. So until then, stay beautiful, people.
I talk as if it were my last chance. Look at my soul, I hope you don't see a bad man. Confessions of an artist who never had fans. Strip me of my pride inside, and truthfully I get afraid in the light, and I'm begging you to save me tonight.